You're lying in bed, staring at the ceiling of your childhood home. It's late. The house is quiet. But then you hear it, a faint scratching sound coming from inside the walls. You tell yourself it's just the house settling. Old pipes, maybe a mouse. But the scratching stops. And then you hear breathing. Not yours. Someone else's. Coming from inside the walls of your own home, and they've been there the whole time. This is called phrogging. It's when someone secretly lives inside your home without you knowing. They hide in your attic, your crawl space, your basement. They come out when you sleep. They eat your food. They watch you. And in 1986, a teenager named Daniel LaPlante turned phrogging into something far worse than anyone could imagine. It started in December of 1986 in Pepperell, Massachusetts, a small, quiet town where nothing bad was supposed to happen. 2 teenage sisters, Annie and Jessica Bowen, were living with their father, Frank Bowen, after their parents' divorce. Their mother had moved out, and the house felt emptier than usual, but the girls were trying to adjust. Then one night, Annie met a boy at a local party. His name was Daniel LaPlante. He was 15 years old, tall, thin, with dark hair and an unsettling stare. He seemed interested in her, maybe too interested. But Annie didn't think much of it. He was just another kid from town. Daniel started showing up at the Bowen house. At first, it seemed harmless. He'd stop by to talk. He'd hang around outside. But then he started appearing at odd times. Times when he shouldn't have known anyone was home. He'd knock on the door late at night. He'd stand in the yard just watching. Annie and Jessica started to feel uncomfortable. Their father noticed too. Frank Bowen told Daniel to stay away. He wasn't welcome anymore, but Daniel didn't listen. Strange things began happening inside the Bowen home. Objects would move on their own. Food would disappear from the kitchen. The girls would come home to find doors open that they knew they'd closed. At night, they'd hear footsteps upstairs when everyone was downstairs, scratching sounds in the walls, creaking floorboards in empty rooms. Annie and Jessica thought they were losing their minds. Frank tried to reassure them. Old houses make noise. It's nothing. But deep down, he wasn't so sure. Then, one night in early December, the Bowen family came home to find their house had been ransacked. Furniture was overturned, drawers were pulled open, but nothing valuable was missing. It wasn't a robbery, it was something else, and scrawled on the walls in paint were bizarre, threatening messages. The family was terrified. They called the police. Officers searched the house top to bottom. They found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no fingerprints. Whoever did this had simply vanished. A few days later, Annie was home alone. She was in her room when she heard a noise downstairs. She froze, listened. Footsteps, slow and deliberate. Someone was in the house. She crept to the top of the stairs and looked down. And there, standing in the hallway, was a figure dressed in her late mother's clothing. A white dress, makeup smeared across the face, and a hatchet in hand. The figure looked up at her, and Annie realized with horror that it was Daniel LaPlante. She screamed and ran back to her room, slamming the door. Daniel chased her. He pounded on the door, laughing, taunting her. Annie climbed out her window onto the roof and jumped to the ground, sprinting to a neighbor's house. The police were called. They arrived within minutes and surrounded the Bowen home. They searched every room, every closet, every corner. But Daniel was gone. Vanished again. Like a ghost. The police expanded their search. They checked the attic, the basement. And then, in a narrow crawl space behind a wall in the basement, they found him. Daniel LaPlante was curled up in the dark, covered in dust and cobwebs, clutching the hatchet. He'd been living inside the walls of the Bowen home for weeks, coming out at night while the family slept, eating their food, watching them, moving their things. He'd been there the entire time. Daniel was arrested and charged with burglary and assault, but because he was a juvenile, he was sent to a youth detention center, not prison. The Bowen family thought it was over. They thought they were safe. But Daniel LaPlante was released after just a few months, and he wasn't done. On December 1st, 1987, almost exactly 1 year after the incident at the Bowen home, Daniel LaPlante broke into a house in Townsend, Massachusetts. It belonged to a 33-year-old woman named Priscilla Gustafson and her 2 young children, 7-year-old William and 5-year-old Abigail. Priscilla's husband, Andrew, was away on a business trip. She was home alone with the kids. It was evening. The house was quiet. Daniel forced his way inside. He was 16 years old now, but he was no longer the awkward teenager who'd hidden in the walls. He was something darker, something more dangerous. Priscilla tried to fight back. She tried to protect her children, but Daniel was armed. He shot Priscilla in the back as she ran. She collapsed in the hallway. William and Abigail, terrified and crying, were next. Daniel drowned them in the bathtub. 2 small children who never had a chance. After killing all 3 members of the Gustafson family, Daniel ransacked the house, stole a few items, and disappeared into the night. When Andrew Gustafson returned home 2 days later, he found his family dead. The scene was horrific. Blood everywhere. His wife's body in the hallway. His 2 children in the bathroom. The police were called immediately. The investigation began. And almost immediately, they had a suspect. Daniel LaPlante. His name came up because of the Bowen case. The similarities were too obvious to ignore. The break-in, the violence, the strange, theatrical nature of the crimes. Police launched a massive manhunt. Daniel had gone into hiding, but he couldn't stay hidden forever. A few days later, a woman in Pepperell reported seeing someone break into a home on her street. Police surrounded the house. They found Daniel hiding in a closet, wearing wet clothes. He'd tried to escape by swimming across a nearby river, but he'd been forced to take shelter. When they arrested him, he confessed, not just to the break-in, but to the murders of Priscilla, William, and Abigail Gustafson. At trial, the prosecution laid out the horrifying details. Daniel LaPlante had planned the attack. He'd stalked the Gustafson home. He knew Andrew was away. He knew Priscilla would be alone with the children, and he'd broken in with the intent to kill. The defense tried to argue that Daniel was mentally ill, that he didn't understand what he was doing, but the jury didn't buy it. In 1988, Daniel LaPlante was convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He's still incarcerated today in a maximum security prison in Massachusetts. But the terror he inflicted didn't end with his arrest. The Bowen sisters were left traumatized, knowing that the boy who'd hidden in their walls had gone on to murder a mother and her 2 children. Andrew Gustafson lost his entire family in one night. The town of Pepperell, a place where people didn't lock their doors, was changed forever. Daniel LaPlante's case became one of the most disturbing examples of phrogging ever recorded, because it wasn't just about someone hiding in a house. It was about control. It was about terrorizing a family from the inside. It was about a predator who lived in the shadows, watching, waiting, planning his next move. And when he was finally caught, he didn't stop. He escalated. He killed. The idea that someone could be living inside your home without you knowing is the kind of fear that stays with you. You start noticing every creak, every shadow, every door that's slightly open when you thought you closed it. You wonder if you're alone. And sometimes you're not. So tonight, when you're lying in bed and you hear a sound you can't explain, ask yourself this: are you really alone in your house?